Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger of bloggingforjobs.com, for a 45-minute in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, here's your host, Jessica, with this episode of Workology.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Workology podcast. This is the second podcast in our series of emerging startups in HR technology. I'm Jessica, and I'm here talking with three founders in the HR technology space who are sharing some of the ways that they're changing the HR industry with their new companies in the HR technology space. So today I have Marylene Delbourg-Delphis. She's the CEO of TalentCircles, which is an HR technology platform helping to build talent pipelines through proactive recruitment and employment branding. Marylene, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Well, thank you, Jessica. Let me start with an apology for my French accent. Even after 25 years in this country, I haven't improved that much. So otherwise, I can safely say that I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started my tech career as the founder of a relational database on the Macintosh in France. And then I moved to Silicon Valley, where I co-founded the subsidiary of that company with Guy Kawasaki in 1987. I later became the CEO of two other companies, and I've helped quite a few companies get off the ground in various capacities as a shadow CEO, a hands-on board member, an investor, or a management consultant in interesting domains ranging from search engines to social media analytics. As far as my background is concerned, I have a doctorate in philosophy, and I have authored several books on the history of fashion and fragrance. I don't have too much time to write anymore, but now and then I like to translate into French the books of great talent such as Guy Kawasaki, Seth Godin, and Hugh MacLeod, and I write prefaces for the French edition of a few great books. The latest one is For the Age of Context by Robert Scoble and Shel Israel. But of course, 99% of my time is dedicated to TalentCircles, which I co-founded exactly 3 years ago.
I love hearing your background because I don't think that most people know that how extensive it is and how wide it is, especially the fact that you've written a book on the history of fragrance, and now you're working in HR technology. So tell us a little bit about TalentCircles. What does your company do to help build talent communities?
We enable organizations to create their own private talent network, and companies can brand their talent network fully. So the concept is pretty simple. When candidates are interested in a job you have or are interested in your company, whether or not you have a job for them, welcome candidates into your talent community and make sure that you remain interesting to them. So in other words, look at your talent community as a sort of continuous virtual career fair in order to build up a lively, and relevant talent pool that you can leverage when you have job openings.
One of my biggest frustrations in the HR and recruiting industry, and I know one that you and I have had lots of conversations about, is the tendency for recruiters and the industry overall to be really reactive. Why do you believe it's important for organizations to focus on proactive recruitment strategies?
So over the past few years, the industry has made a distinction between proactive and reactive recruiting. So the idea behind proactive recruiting is that companies identify candidates in anticipation of their needs for a given period of time, whereas reactive recruiting is a way to recruit based on immediate needs. In practice, however, most companies only have a reactive recruiting strategy because this is the way most technologies and methodologies have been designed for 2 decades.
And that's a huge frustration and a point of contention with myself, which is why I love what TalentCircles offers. It allows you to be proactive and let candidates find you and get to know you. And then when those openings come available, you seek in your talent network first and connect with candidates who have already expressed an interest in you. So you mean that the current process leads to reactive recruiting? Why is that important with the current processes we have in place, and what can we do to change those?
Yes. So when you want to recruit today, you post jobs on job boards, and candidates are sent to your career site or your page, your career site. Yes, sorry. When they want to apply, then these candidates are processed based on their fit for a job. So sourcing is coupled with job post and job description, which are themselves coupled with the applied button where candidates are processed and sent to the black hole. So the whole system is transactional and structurally reactive, and it doesn't work very well. This is why Lou Adler was again saying to an acquiescing audience at the HCI conference last December that our industry has experienced the same systematic issues for the last 14 years, the same awful numbers, the same, and that the current technologies only serve 17% of candidates. And we all know the astronomical cost for companies of bad or failed hires for US companies, which exceeds, by the way, 400 billion a year. So employers complain they can't find the right candidates, and candidates complain that they can't find the very same employers who would love to know about them. That's what we are at right now.
We have some really great resources on the blog. So if you just go to bloggingforjobs.com and go over to the right-hand sidebar, if you just put in quality of hire, we have a number of posts, as well as proactive recruiting would be some good places for you to get started as you're trying to understand how to build a strategy and kind of look at new ways to recruit proactively instead of reactively. Marylene, can employers adopt a proactive recruiting strategy with traditional technologies they have in place right now?
Not really. The same causes tend to produce the same effects. I think that employers must realign their use of traditional vendors with the actual expectation of their company and the new behaviors of candidates. They need new technologies designed to, one, power and facilitate interactions between candidates and employers, whether or not there is a job opening at the time of this interaction. They need more than vendors selling them data. And two, they need to ensure that candidates and employers can interact continuously. ATSs were never designed to create this interaction. So in short, companies need to populate their talent pool if they want to adopt a proactive human capital strategy. When you have a lot of people in your live Rolodex, chances are that you will find the right person when you have a new job opening. Proactive recruiting ultimately is fundamentally relationship-based. This is the way companies used to operate for centuries, and something that modern technology enables them to do again. Reactive recruiting is a disease that started 20 years ago with transactional systems and the Web 1.0. So proactive recruiting used to be the norm, and today it's just common sense to go back to that because it's possible through technology.
I'm definitely more hopeful about recruiters and recruiting teams adopting a proactive recruiting strategy than I have, and I would say the past 18 to 24 months. Earlier today, I was over on Quora, just kind of poking around. I like to go there from time to time and answer questions, pose questions, and just connect with different people. And I ran across a technical recruiter who was looking for a CRM to be able to engage candidates for the long term. So when I start seeing questions like that in a place like Quora, I feel like we're at a point now where we're moving towards the old days of proactive recruiting or maybe a new dawn. We just have to invest in technologies like TalentCircles to be able to manage that process, because an applicant tracking system is not designed to be able to handle ongoing conversations with a candidate over the long term.
I agree.
I had the privilege of first meeting Marylene several years ago on Twitter, actually. And for those of you who are new to Twitter, it's a great place to go. And I hope that if you're at the HR Technology Conference, you're participating in the Twitter hashtag HR Tech Conf, or just tweeting, at your leisure. It's a really great place for information. But I actually met her on Twitter and then met her in person at HR Evolution several years ago. And I learned quickly in doing some research on this woman that was connecting me with me on Twitter, then wanted to meet with me, that she had a really extensive technology background that really goes far beyond HR technology. And I like that about you. And when honestly, when I first connected with you on Twitter and I did my homework and saw like your background, I'm like, why does this woman want to talk to me? She's obviously extremely well versed in tech. So why don't you tell us about your prior experience? You mentioned a little bit about the database company, ACI fourth mention, but how do you think that this gave you some experience to be able to build the TalentCircles platform and kind of introduce HR and recruiting to this new technology?
So first and foremost, as the CEO of multiple companies, I ended up hiring myself about 800 people. And I did the hiring myself because I did not realize why some of the recruiters I had could not find the people I actually wanted. And it's only when I started in HR that I realized how hard it was for recruiters to serve the actual need of the business, and that most of the tools they were using were anchored in the past. So my long experience in tech is helping me, and has definitely helped me bring phenomenal engineers who are not simply coders, but are also experienced architecture and product designers. And none of them expected really to work for an HR product, but they started to realize how exciting it was to actually help build the future of so many people. Because in the end, HR is at the intersection of business necessities and the social good. It's key for the wealth of our country.
It's a great time to be in human resources, and certainly in the technology side. There's a lot of innovation happening, creativity, and I really feel like now more than ever we're at a point where the industry is addressing the needs, and recruiters and HR people are ready to be the driver of change at their organizations now more than ever. I want to thank you, the listeners, for taking the time to listen to us today, but stay tuned because we have 2 more interviews with other CEOs. But I want to thank Marylene. Where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about TalentCircles?
So they can go to the TalentCircles site, talentcircles.com. They can also meet with us on our blog and also in our talent community. So thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you, Marylene, and thanks, guys. And stay tuned. Up next is our next guest, Brinn McCagg. He's the CEO of Recruitifi as part of our Emerging HR Technology podcast series here on Workology. And we're back, everybody, with the Workology podcast. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and I'm talking to you today about emerging startups in HR technology. We're continuing the conversation about emerging startups in HR technology, and I am talking with 3 different founders in the HR technology space, sharing some of the new ways that this technology is changing the industry and hopefully coming soon to your company. Today, I have Brinn McCagg. He's the CEO of Recruitifi, an HR technology platform that's aimed at hiring quickly to fill immediate needs. Hi, Brinn. How are you?
Good morning, Jessica. I'm great. Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Who is Brinn McCagg?
Well, first of all, I look forward to seeing you in HR Tech. And my background is I started off my career in finance, and after a couple of years of working on Wall Street, I went off and started a business. And for the last 10 years, I've been in the HR technology area, and Recruitifi is my 4th startup, and definitely the one I'm most excited about.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about Recruitifi. What problem does it solve and help HR practitioners?
So Recruitifi, I really looked at 2 companies about a year ago, Uber and Airbnb, and really borrowed, or as Picasso or Steve Jobs would say, the best ideas are best artists steal. I really took their business models and applied them to the recruiting space and leveraging sort of the shared economy and the crowdsourcing techniques that they're using. And what we're looking at is when you look at, companies still struggle with recruiting. I mean, there's been so many technologies, over the last 2 decades invented, whether it's job boards or applicant tracking systems or social tools or LinkedIn networking tools. But recruiting still remains incredibly expensive when you look at the total cost of recruiting. Very hard to identify and find that right candidate that's available, interested, and qualified for the position. And it takes a lot of time, and time is the big killer. So what Recruitifi does is it allows companies to very easily come in and leverage our network of expert recruiters to help them fill positions. And everything, it's sort of one contract, one platform, and we collect the fee upon hire. It's a flat fee of 14%, and then we pay out the participating recruiters that helped fill the position.
And let me just say that I really love what they're doing, so much so that I am a member of the board of advisors. But their platform is really interesting, and I feel like it's going to solve a problem. And that leads us to kind of my next question, which is reactive recruiting. I feel like the recruiting industry continues to be really reactive, and it seems like there's always some sort of fire to put out or position that is extremely urgent. How does Recruitifi help make the hiring process better and more efficient?
Really what we focus on is helping companies hire more easily, faster, and better candidates. And what happens is in traditional recruiting methodologies, HR departments or talent acquisition departments sort of go between, crisis and overcapacity. In August, they might be sitting around with not that much to do, and then they go into a hiring season or a hiring cycle, and they've got an enormous number of positions that they're struggling to fill. And there's been studies that shown that unfilled positions can cost a company 1.5 to 3 times that person's salary for each month that person where you've not filled that position. So time to fill is critical. And what we're helping companies solve is we're a supplemental tool or a strategic platform for companies to help them when they need to fill hard to fill positions, high volume positions, or those urgent to fill positions. It's the, break the glass in an emergency kind of thing tool. When you need us, we're there. And you can leverage literally thousands of recruiters in a controlled and confidential and very concise way, and get the results of sort of a headhunter, a hand-vetted candidate that's been background checked and been curated by an expert recruiter, but you're getting it for less than half the price and in much faster. The average time for the hires that we have made, the average time it takes us to introduce the candidate to the hiring company is 5.5 days. So in terms of sort of ease, cost, and time, those are the big fat things that we deliver on, and quality of candidate. Because at the end of the day, it's our proposition that there's no substitute for a hand-vetted candidate. Expert recruiters, and there's a lot of good ones out there, can really understand the nuances of the situation, can understand how a candidate fits culturally and experientially into a position. And there's no algorithms, and everybody has been trying to invent systems to disintermediate the human element and sort of match candidates electronically to jobs. And our proposition is people aren't widgets. What we have to do is leverage expert recruiters in a scalable way and in a way that's controlled and in a way that's economical for all sides.
I really love the concept, and I like that you're taking advantage and leveraging these headhunters or recruiters that have been vetted by you guys who are already having conversations with candidates already. They're out in the space, they're on the phone, they're dialing, they're following up with people that they have relationships with, and then you simply work with Recruitifi to distribute the job to the already vetted headhunters or recruiters. They pick up the phone and say, Jimmy, Bob, I talked to you last week. I have something for you. Let me shoot it over to you. And that makes the candidate quality so much better. And then they already have that relationship between recruiter and candidate. And then it's easier for the corporate recruiter or recruiting team on the corporate side. You can rest a little bit easier. You don't have to be running around like a crazy chicken looking for some silver bullet that's going to fill these must-have positions immediately.
No, you're exactly right, Jessica, and you've sort of pitched our proposition exactly. What happens is when you go out and hire companies, they sort of get into a crisis and then they got to go out and hire a headhunter, but that's sort of a shot in the dark. You don't know if that one headhunter is going to be good or not, and they might be great. But you still have to negotiate with them, and it takes a long time, and then they go out and do that sort of linear search. What we're doing is leveraging the crowd and doing it in a very controlled way, a very confidential way, and a very concise way, because when you send out what we call Jobcast, which is a job description and information about the opening, we send it to just the recruiters that have self-selected based on the industry level and location that are relevant to that job opening. And we're also ranking the recruiters based on their performance. If a recruiter submits a lot of good candidates that get hired or even get put into a yes category in the disposition, they're gaining points. We're using crowdsourcing in I think, a very unique way. Most of the business models that have come along and successfully leveraged the crowdsourcing model to great economic benefit have been on the consumer side, business to consumer. And I'm fascinated by their models, because if you look at companies like Airbnb and Uber, they've literally delivered a better product. They pay, in the example of Uber, their drivers more money, and they're making money themselves. So in a sense, that's what we're doing. We're leveraging recruiters and enabling third-party recruiters to come in, sign up, self-select what their expertise is. And what we're doing is we're providing a controlled platform for companies to be able to use that crowd in a way that's sustainable for all. In other words, A, there's a fixed contract. B, there's fixed pricing, and it's a very easy to use system. And it also creates rankings. So companies or recruiters that behave badly on the system, they get negative, their points go down and they quickly get weeded off the system. And so what we're really doing in many ways with these kind of crowdsourcing models is relocalizing business. We're enabling companies to go and say, I can find the right recruiters exactly for my role. And recruiters, they could be in North Dakota for all we care, as long as they're experts in their field and they can find the right candidates. It doesn't matter where they are or who they are. What it matters is that they're experts in their niche field. And with our system, you can become more and more niche and more expert in your field, which is has incredible implications, because it really is creating this sort of cloud of recruiters that can be just used and tapped on an agile basis with no fixed cost. And again, we deliver results in days.
I love that we're rating both sides. So the recruiter corporate entity is saying, yes, no, here's how I feel about the recruiter that I worked with. But the recruiter is also rating that corporation. And for those of you that have taken an Uber or a Lyft, know that you are being rated just as at the end of your ride, you give that driver the stars. That driver is rating you, and they will turn down rides if you're less than like 4.7 stars. So be on your best behavior when you're out there recruiting or riding in your Uber or Lyft.
Yeah, what this is doing is creating basically a community of better behaved participants, and better behaved participants lead to better outcomes, because you are eliminating the inefficiency of bad friction, essentially. And what we want to do on our platform is ensure that companies we're not looking for volume. We're not looking for these tools where you just spam out to thousands of job boards and get thousands of candidates back, or you go onto social networks and look for literally thousands of people and hope to get somebody to respond. We're looking to deliver results. And on average, we bring back 10 to 20 candidates that are qualified, hand vetted, always with complete information, because they can't get through the system without being submitted with complete information. and always where the candidate confirms their interest, because the system doesn't allow them to be presented to the company until the candidate's confirmed. So what we want to protect is the value of that process. And so companies that come in and sort of spam out a lot of jobs and then don't react and don't sort candidates, we don't welcome, in a sense, we weed them off the system. They're not right for the system. We want people to tend sort of their side of the garden effectively and well. And then on the other side, if recruiters submit candidates that are not appropriate, well, first of all, they're limited to 4 candidates per job cast. So they get a job cast, they can only submit 4 candidates. So in a sense, they can only do, so much damage on each job cast. But also, it's quite a lot of work for them. So they're not really incented. It's not about volume. They have to write a note about the candidate. They have to gather all the candidate's information and input that candidate. So for them to go to that length, they got to really think about, is this worth me trying to, in a sense, place this candidate and get a fee and go through all this work? So we really try to create a controlled community on both sides. And the systems ranks the bad recruiters, and the system ranks the bad companies literally just by the actions on the site. So if you submit candidates that get swiped into the yes category or get hired, that recruiter gets points. If a company sends jobcasts and then doesn't respond or doesn't look at the candidates, they get negative points. And recruiters can see that and say, I'm not going to bother submitting candidates to this company because they never look at them. And so very quickly, the system becomes sort of self-regulating.
You mentioned earlier at the beginning of our conversation that you have spent 10 years plus in recruiting and have founded and worked in, I think, 4 HR technology startups. One of the things when we first met, I hadn't heard a lot about Recruitifi. And I think that was because you guys aren't in like the startup news. And mostly that is because you guys are taking a different approach than most startups in the HR space, meaning that you haven't received any venture funding. Now, let me just kind of put this into perspective. And I have a very nice, robust list for you. If you just go to bloggingforjobs.com, click on the right-hand sidebar in the search box and just enter in HR technology mergers or HR technology acquisitions or HR technology fundings, you're going to get to a timeline list from 2005 to present of companies that have been acquired, received funding, or have had some sort of IPO activity. And so this year alone, based on my calculations, there have been 25 plus investments made in by venture companies in the HR technology space, over $350 million. But you guys are taking a different approach in that you're going private with this. How do you feel like this strategy is helping your efforts to provide a great service to recruiters and your HR practitioners out there?
Well, that's a great question. It actually applies to this industry and I think any startup. And by the way, I want to just correct one thing. I've started 4 companies, not all 4 were in the HR technology. This is my second company in the HR technology space. But I'm a big believer in Eric Ries's The Lean Startup, and it's a great book for anyone that wants to start a business. And it's all about building minimum viable products and staying very lean, because as Jeff Bezos said, scarcity creates innovation, and crisis creates creativity. And those stresses, while they feel bad at the time, they really get you to focus, and they really get an entrepreneur and an entrepreneurial team to focus on being creative and on being innovative and doing more with less. And if you raise too much money in the early stages of a business, it can really become a crutch. And what happens is you throw money at a problem instead of good ideas at a problem. And then that problem actually grows because you start to engineer around the problem, and all of a sudden you've got 5 more problems. And so what we're focused on is we're privately funded. So, but we're also focused on making money. And the good news is we're a technology business that has huge scale, but we're a cash earning business. So we make a significant amount of money. So that's the good news. But we have been approached by lots of investors, and I'm sure at some point we will take some financing in, but we'll just play that by ear.
I pointed this out just because it's really common to take on a C or a Series A fund rather quickly. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It doesn't mean that it's right. It's just interesting as I'm looking at the industry to see everyone's different approaches. And that was one of the reasons that I was attracted to Brinn and Recruitifi. I want to thank you, Brinn, for taking the time to talk to us on the Workology podcast. Where can people find you and learn more about what you guys do?
Well, definitely come to our site, www.recruitify.com. And you can actually spell it either way, IFI or IFY. We just got the IFY URL because somebody had that URL and people were making that confusion. So you can go to our website. I also would encourage anybody to go to our blog. We have lots of content and lots of white papers and other information that we're producing. And if anyone wants to reach me, they can reach me at Brinn, BRIN, @recruitify.com.
Well, thank you, Brinn, for coming to talk with us, and thank you guys for tuning into the podcast. We're continuing our Emerging HR Technology Startup series here, and just after, we'll come back with another interview. Thank you, guys, and talk to you soon. And we're back for our third and final interview as part of our Emerging Startups in HR Technology. I have here with me Chirag Nangia, and he is the CEO and co-founder of Reppify. Hey, welcome to the Workology podcast.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Great to be on.
So let's talk a little bit about you. What's your background, and how did you get into HR technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I went from the extreme other side of enterprise, or working from going into a startup. I used to work for IBM for about 5 years before starting Reppify, and kind of predominantly my role was helping Fortune 100 companies figure out how social media could, at that point, this is going back now 10 years ago nearly, but how social media could impact their business in all sorts of ways. A lot of the things that we were doing were kind of oriented around marketing products and things of that nature, and then coming up with kind of strategies to kind of help these companies really figure out, what all of these, connections and followers and all these things could really mean for their go-to-market and so on. What thing that came across to me like over and over was that, a lot of the kind of, I'd say strategy or plan of attack was, I'd say, a bit kind of like, basically looking at, okay, well, Twitter's getting big, so let's maybe hire someone to send tweets out or something of that nature. But there was a lot more that could have been done out of all this great innovation that was happening. And then, that started kind of, for me, kind of give me some thoughts around, what could really, what type of solutions we could come up with. And as we kind of dug a little bit deeper, there seemed to be a massive opportunity when you took social data and combined it to a relatively, or not even relatively, a generally, I think, inefficient process, which was, HR, and specifically recruiting in HR, right? I think companies spend a lot of money, and a lot of it's not like result oriented, around, finding people. And I think what social media, and I hate the word social media now because it's changed so much. But at that time, 5 years ago, what social media, quote unquote, could have contributed to it was, I think, really significant. And that's where, for us, it really was our starting point, or really where we created our hypothesis around what we wanted to do.
I'm definitely a fan of social media, and I agree with you that I hate the word social media because it doesn't really describe exactly how the interactions work, and really how, in some cases for me, my relationships because of social media are better relationships, and I've made really strong friendships because of Twitter or Facebook or blogging.
Absolutely. And the interesting part, as we kind of went through this process and we came up with our initial business plan and all that, and got a lot of good feedback. And then we launched the company. I decided to leave IBM and drive cross country 3 hours, or not 3 hours, sorry, 3 days from Boston to San Francisco, and get the show on the road. And as we took the product out and got the initial feedback and traction, I think one thing we learned was that the connections, the value that it provides all of us individually is huge, right? I mean, there's certainly, I leverage my LinkedIn connections, my Facebook connections, and Twitter followers and all that for, just personal, social reasons and everything else. But thinking about it from an enterprise and leveraging that for things like recruiting, I think there is just an untapped potential there, and that's where we were like, this is going to be just a game changer in terms of driving a function like referral, for example, which really is based around relationships, right? And that's what referral is all about. But then if you can combine that idea, such a referral idea, to the idea of that now people have 300, 400, 500 connections, if not more, and then aggregate that across the company, that can be massive. And then that's where Reppify, that's our sweet spot, basically.
We did an earlier podcast this year, one of my first, with Jason Seiden, and we talked a lot about brand ambassadors. And so your platform, Reppify, kind of takes brand ambassadors, or those employees within the organization, and helps them distribute opportunities with from their company where they're employed out to their social media connections. Is that correct?
Exactly. That's a huge part of what we do, and then we take it even a step further. So what we do then is, when we talk about things like taking connections and kind of looking at it across the company, it is certainly very exciting, and also be a lot of data, right? There's so many, because there are so many connections, right? If you look at a 10,000 person firm, and even with 100 connections each, like unique connections each, that's like probably 1 million people that they're basically, the company, if you think about it, that from that perspective, the company is directly connected to, right, through its employee base. The value prop that we provide on top of like the distribution side of it is also the ability to then kind of actually match the right people amongst that larger pool of kind of connections around a company to the job requisitions that the company is trying to fill. Because again, a lot of that is, and all of this is very unstructured data too, right? And backing up a little bit, like job feeds are just, you have your descriptions, your titles, your requirements, your typical job feed, and then you have your profile information for all your connections. So you have like, where they currently work, what they're doing at that job, where their job history has been, all of that information. It's all pretty unstructured. So a lot of the challenge around all of this is like, how do you actually, kind of go through that basically mess of data and find the right people? And that's, kind of a lot of what we do, is going to help the company leverage, and also the employee leverage, this kind of greater base of connections.
So let me just say that I'm a fan of referrals, and they were always one of my top 3 sources of hire. And the 2014 Career Crossroads Report, which includes the 2013 data from Jerry Crispin and company over there, they list referrals as actually the number 1 source of hire. It's almost 20% of their findings saying that 20% of hires are coming through referrals. And I tend to agree. I like the social media component, because let me just kind of bring you back about 6 years and how I was using referral data, is that when you applied into the applicant tracking system, you had to list the person who was the referral and put their full name. And then when I went through and we actually made an offer and hired on in the candidate, and most of the referral processes that incentives that I used, you had an initial lump sum that they received, and then something in like 30, 60, or 90 days. But it was really manual. So we would go through all the new hires, and then we would implement the hire's name in a spreadsheet, and then the person they were referred by, and then send that off to payroll, where they would process payment. I think that, I like the social component so much better, because in a lot of ways, sometimes you don't know who you don't know, and you're having a conversation with somebody on social media or on a bus or in a random place, and this helps draw the connection. It certainly makes the administrative side of what I was doing much, much less.
Absolutely. There's a lot of benefits that we can help drive out of this. And, jumping back on the point that you made earlier about, the referral hires being the number 1 source, I think the stats that we've seen are exactly aligned with that, somewhere between 15 and 20%. But number 1, and also a lot of the other metrics too, right? In the sense where, number 1 in terms of retention, number 1 in terms of performance, profitability of a hire. ERE does a lot of number of studies on this as well. There's a lot of like good solid data that backs why referrals tend to be just stellar from that perspective. Now, the interesting thing that I think for our companies like ours, right, and I'm speaking a little bit more agnostically, not just Reppify, but like in the general space. The other number that I think is maybe, even to some extent even more interesting, is the I think it was the area, one of the groups did a study around like what the target is, right? So the target that was like set, I think it was last year, that one of the big surveys that had been done was that like companies really want to drive it up to like 50%, right? There's a huge imperative, like, because there's so much good data showing how referrals are successful, that they want to like help drive referrals to even a more significant portion of the recruiting spend, or not even thinking of spend, but in terms of the recruiting, that where they're finding the talent from. And to get from like, 20 to 50%, right? And I think, Jessica, this is right to your point. The way that's going to be enabled is technology, right? Technology's got to be the big, like kind of hook to like say, okay, well, help us figure out who the right matches are. Let us really, revamp how we reward our employees. There's a lot of things that technology can do as part of the enabler versus like 10 years ago where these things weren't even possible, right? So I think that's what's really exciting about all of this.
This just kind of supercharges the referral process. And so I'll say that from 2007 to 2009, in my last corporate role, referrals were accounted for 30% of my overall hires. The other 30% was accounted through social media. So you're taking two things that I think can really like just take your hiring to, almost another like dimension and unifying them together. That's really powerful.
Exactly. That's what's really exciting about all of this, right? I mean, I think the cool thing as well, I mean, now that we've been around for a few years, we've been kind of going through the sales process. I think the appetite, the readiness, the willingness to kind of really invest in these type of technologies is increasing tremendously. And we've been getting, sectors that we thought would not quite be ready to do something like this, even at this level of kind of aggressiveness. We've seen, a huge uptake in the non-traditional outside, like for example, outside of technology, and it's really, I think for us, it's a great validation that the leadership in recruitment and HR kind of across the board are really starting to realize that this is like the future, right? This is where the intersection of social and referral and all of this will be almost, I hate the word, but almost a game changer in what. Basically in the recruiting function.
One of the things that I'm really excited about when it comes to Reppify is that you guys are matching from an existing talent pool that is allowing to locate those candidates that might have gotten lost in a previous hiring process or current. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, Jessica. I mean, that actually came out of like I mentioned, our core technology is really based around matching this, candidate that's out there that's connected to a person at a company versus the job rack, right? So when we were building and we were testing the technology initially, we were seeing some really good success, and as we took it to some customers. One of the things that came back to us was that, hey, we've got like, millions, sometimes, tens of thousands, in some cases, millions of people sitting on our own database, right? And they might have applied for one job and they were just sat there, or they might have come in through some other funnel, and then they're just, now they're kind of in that database. And frankly, we're just not looking at that at all, because really the experience to go back and actually like use that over time is just not really designed. It's not really, most of the systems like the ATS systems aren't really designed for that, right? There's really a very kind of limited search capacity, if anything. So most recruiters don't even go back and search it. And which I think is actually a pretty terrible experience, right? It's a terrible experience certainly for the company, because they've invested a lot of dollars in actually getting those people there. It's certainly a terrible experience for the candidate, because they might have applied for one job, and some of the customers we're working with have like tens of thousands of jobs open at any given point. So they applied for one job, but there's probably a good 20, 30, 40, if not more jobs that would be good fits at that point. And then even 3 months down the road, another 10 jobs that might be a good fit, and the person might still be looking, but they may not find those jobs. So what we discovered was our technology could actually help do some of that kind of almost that inefficiency around that, which is really based around like find the best matches amongst that database versus the profile for the person and the job information and all that, and we could apply it for that scenario as well. So that actually, it came out more from, actually, to be honest, came out more from just our dealings with our customers and kind of learning around their processes, and again, some of the inefficiencies that they had in their current program.
I think those are kind of the best kind of product enhancements, right? When the recruiters or the HR practitioners that you're working with help guide those changes for you.
Oh, absolutely, because for us, we're we're attacking this. We've learned a lot about the space, and we have some great team members who've had experience in the recruiting or HR side. But again, at the end of the day, we're coming up with a solution that is, somewhat based also on helping to change the model a bit, right? So we have to be a little bit aggressive in terms of like what we're doing, because it's something, it has to be a little bit also just a little bit uncomfortable too, right? In a good way, right? Because it helps you kind of increase the I think innovation, right? Because you really you want to be kind of a step ahead. But at the same time, like our learnings, we've learned so much. I mean, again, myself not coming from even a recruiting background 4 or 5 years ago, I knew very little about the space, and just the amount of kind of feedback we've gotten from our both prospects and customers, right? In some cases, even before we closed the deal, we've gotten some great feedback, which has helped us innovate even further. And I think a good thing about being in this space, and I think Jessica, you can attest to this, is that people are just honestly very friendly and very open to giving that feedback, and because they want some really good, compelling solutions, right? And that I think speaks to the quality of innovation now happening in the space.
Yeah, it's an exciting industry to be in for sure. Well, let's talk about where people can find out more about you, Chirag, and Reppify. Where do they need to go? What do they need to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, obviously you can always go to Reppify.com, Reppify.com. It's always we've got our demo video and all that there. But I think, to really kind of contact us and get the information out to you, easiest way to do that is either you can email me directly, which is always more than happy to answer any questions people have. And that's just chi@Reppify.com, chi@Reppify.com. That's always a good avenue. I'm happy to engage that way. And then, certainly you can always send us an email from our website, and we can always get back from there as well.
If you're heading to the HR Technology Conference, I'll just mention that Reppify does have a booth. It's 1243, and you can stop by and see them and take a look at their product. I want to thank you for joining us for the Workology podcast. Thanks for giving us some insights about Reppify. Certainly appreciate it.
Well, Jessica, thank you so much, and thank you for plugging the booth. I should have done that actually, but thank you for plugging that for us. I appreciate that.
No, I'm scrambling on my phone, like looking on my HR Tech app, going, what's their booth number? So yeah, 1243. Check it out. I appreciate everybody for taking the time to listen to the second part of our 3 emerging HR technologies. So we have 6 here that we're talking about leading into HR tech. This is the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, HR, and recruitment. Until next time, we'll see you over on Blogging for Jobs. Thanks, guys.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by